The chamber had no ceiling. Instead, a slow-turning storm of fractal geometries hovered above impossible colors, spiraling through non-Euclidean space, whispering riddles in tones no throat could produce. The room itself pulsed with a low harmonic hum, calibrated to subtly strain neural pathways, just enough to ensure that any student entering did so under pressure. The walls shimmered between dimensions, alternating from polished crystal to memory-reactive film, recording every twitch of failure. It was the heart of the Galaxian Academy, the impossible puzzle gauntlet. Some called it a rite of humiliation, others a genius filtration system. Designed by a joint commission of 97 species, the gauntlet stood as a monument to the limits of sentient cognition. And it was not merciful. Kizal had once charted a sixth-dimensional navigation route using only scent-based logic. She now sat curled under a hover bench outside the chamber, a soft whimper escaping every few breaths as her neural dampeners rebalanced. Two of her eye clusters had collapsed under the strain of recursive inversion. Jorix, whose cognitive matrices had been enhanced via family lineage grants, had walked out 15 minutes earlier with his upper thorax twitching in what physicians called logic lash. He'd wept silently, then loudly, then demanded to know why he could still hear the puzzle laughing, even though it had no sound output. The gauntlet didn't kill, that would have been uncouth. But it bruised the mind, bent it, folded it back on itself. No student had made it past stage 7. That was when the spatial logic inverted and began referencing non-occurring outcomes from future iterations. The faculty encouraged this suffering. Humility was important, especially for prodigies. And then, one mid-cycle afternoon, Milo wandered in. 10 years old, from Earth, freckled. Backpack covered in cartoon cats, and a faded sticker that read, "Ask me about my algorithms." A thin trail of granola bar crumbs marked his path from the inter-campus shuttle station. He licked his fingers idly, then pushed the heavy chamber doors open, squinting into the swirl of refracted dimensions. "Cool museum," he muttered, adjusting the straps of his backpack. "Bet they have touch screens." He didn't read the plaque beside the entrance. If he had, he might have noticed the part where it warned that unaccompanied entry was forbidden without neural shielding. Instead, Milo stepped inside. Behind him, the doors hummed closed with ceremonial finality. Milo had come to Galaxian Academy with little fanfare. The human delegation had quietly offered him and his older sister spots in the interspecies academic exchange. She, being older, took advanced political theory courses, with a specialization in conflict mediation. Milo had been placed in the exploratory mathematics and theoretical chaos division, a niche corner of the school known for driving most 12-legged professors into fits of envy or despair. Not that Milo noticed. To him, school was just a bigger version of home, and puzzles were better than lunch. He solved them like other kids drew dinosaurs. Pattern recognition came to him the way humming came to bored people. So, when his sister's class ran long and he was told to wait quietly, he obeyed. Quietly wandered, quietly got lost, quietly entered the most dangerous pedagogical trap in the galaxy. At first glance, the chamber looked like a game. Light-up platforms, floating data glyphs, spinning logic gates suspended in quantum stasis fields. A child's mind, already fluent in Earth's highest-level math and playfully addicted to riddles, would not think this was a serious threat. The first puzzle was a dynamic symmetry collapse grid. Milo tilted his head. Oh, like folding socks. He knelt, pulled a pencil stub from his backpack, and made a few quick sketches on the floor using the back of a candy wrapper. The Gauntlet sensors noted his action, interpreted it as a violation of protocol, then recalibrated difficulty upward. Stage 2 engaged. Recursive illusion projection. Milo reached out and poked the glowing shape that flickered into multiple dimensions. He giggled. Feels like warm jello. He leaned into the illusion, traced its repeating cycles, then casually walked through it at the precise moment its fourth echo overlapped with a shadow phase. The system froze, recalculated, adjusted again. The Gauntlet had dealt with geniuses before. It had anticipated minds honed by 100 species. It had never dealt with someone who thought a recursive probability trap was kind of fun. Stage 3 initiated. Time dilation puzzle. The room stretched, seconds looped, choices echoed before they were made. Milo sat cross-legged and watched the lights dance. This is just that one board game my cousin cheated at, he mumbled, then reconfigured a section of the room's holographic logic tree using a piece of crayon and his lunch wrapper to bridge two incompatible circuits. It worked. He didn't know it shouldn't. Stage 4. Then 5. Hours passed, or rather, they did and didn't, depending on the chamber's manipulation of space-time. By stage 10, Milo had taken off his shoes and was eating another granola bar, legs swinging from a floating disc. The Gauntlet, now reacting in real time, escalated. Sentient code fragments began testing his emotional range. Holograms of failure played on the walls. Faint cries echoed from previous students' recordings. Milo raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. That's not creepy at all. He rewrote a logic spiral into a doodle of a cat chasing its tail, and the system short-circuited momentarily, trying to resolve the recursive symbolism. Stage 15. The floor became a liquid map of every decision he had ever made. Each wrong choice created a shockwave of mental strain. Milo took a deep breath, pulled out his juice box, and said, "This is like that choose-your-own-adventure book with the cursed mirror." Then he stepped forward, zigzagged across outcomes, and exited the stage with a bounce. Stage 17. Only two beings had ever made it here, and both had lost consciousness before they could attempt the puzzle. Milo stared up at a multi-dimensional riddle so complex it involved emotional algorithms, metaphor-based physics, and anti-gravity grammar loops. "Yikes," he said, mouthful of granola. "This one looks long." He rolled up his sleeves. Then, after a brief pause, he used his pencil to draw a small cartoon sun with sunglasses on the final input panel. For reasons the ethics board would argue about for weeks, this collapsed the final logic cascade. The Gauntlet's core dimmed. The chamber lights fell still. Atop the final plinth, Milo sat humming an earth pop tune no alien could translate. He wiped his hands on his shorts, took a long sip from his juice box, and burped softly. When the faculty arrived 20 minutes later, expecting to find another prodigy slumped from cognitive overload, they found a sticky-fingered 10-year-old casually swinging his legs. He waved. "Hey, I think your museum game broke. Also, your vending machine's out of applesauce." The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the silence of civilization teetering on the edge of panic. The footage was replayed 27 times in the first hour. A room of alien scholars, educators, and ethics officers sat rigidly around the central holo display, many blinking asynchronously, a few periodically dabbing their sensory orifices in stunned silence. Milo, 10 years old, covered in snack residue, humming a tune with no clear rhythm, was caught on surveillance crawling beneath a logic archway designed to simulate gravitational paradoxes. He had bypassed it using nothing but a juice straw and what appeared to be idle commentary about the puzzle wanting to be friends. Then, with the crayon drawing of a sun, he'd solved the final input sequence. It should have triggered an emergency lockdown. Instead, the system accepted it, with delight. "He doesn't even check the phase lattice before engaging the finale," whispered Administrator Zalvok, who hadn't slept in 2 cycles. His hands trembled against his chair's stabilizer. He just drew something, smiling, on the master key node." "That was no drawing," murmured Professor Lithel, a 3-eyed Tharnaxi behavioral theorist. "It was a sigil, a symbolic overlay, an emotional cipher rendered in child glyphs. A psychological override." "It's a doodle," said Coordinator Naroon flatly, antennae twitching with skepticism. The boy drew a smiling Sunday. It wore sunglasses. "A sun with sunglasses," Lithel repeated, breathless. "The symbol of a luminous entity shielding its own gaze. Self-awareness, layered in self-protection. Pure genius." Several attendees had to be escorted out to calm their systems. Meanwhile, Milo had been escorted to the Academy's auxiliary medbay, not because he was injured, but because the attending staff genuinely believed he should be. Even the Gauntlet's failsafe suggested psychic fatigue should have rendered him at least partially nonverbal. Instead, he was asking the nurse, a gentle 6-armed creature named Yavella, if she had any paper so he could sketch out a new board game idea. She watched him cautiously, scanning his vitals for any sign of latent neurological surge. "You don't feel lightheaded?" she asked. "I mean, I skipped lunch, so kinda." Milo swung his legs over the exam table. "But I had 3 granola bars during the puzzles." The impossible puzzle gauntlet, she clarified. Yeah, that. The walls kept changing, and there were these whispery math things. It was neat. Yavela turned slowly toward the attending physician outside the room, and gave him the universal signal for, I have no idea how this child is alive. Across campus, the aftermath fanned out in waves. Professors panicked quietly. Students whispered in trembling awe. The disciplinary board launched a probe to determine whether Milo had breached any protocols by entering the chamber unsupervised. He had. But nobody had stopped him. No one could quite remember why. The guards on rotation were sure they'd seen him enter, but neither had registered him as a threat. Something about the way he walked. The humming. The snack. I thought he was with a tour group, muttered Officer Paltron, clutching his report tablet. Or maybe a VIP's kid. He nodded at me, added his partner. Like, real casual. I thought maybe he was supposed to be there. And you didn't stop him? He had a juice box, Paltron said defensively. The Ethics Council now debated whether children from Earth were subject to standard academy access laws. A small faction argued that Milo was, in fact, an experimental AI construct disguised as a child. Another group began circulating the theory that Earth's educational system was based entirely on psychic training. Do you see how he treats five-dimensional lattice puzzles? Hissed Professor Kren. Like stacking blocks. What sort of mind processes fluid causality like it's arithmetic? He used crayons, Kren. I know. One instructor, a nervous, glitter-skinned Valthi named Instructor Leem, was assigned temporary leave after admitting they'd once given Milo free access to the Academy's topological sandbox because he looked bored and was very polite. In the Academy's interspecies recovery lounge, Kizal sat in quiet contemplation. The aftershocks of her earlier Gauntlet attempt had mostly faded, though her secondary cognition cluster still refused to process recursion. Milo wandered by, holding a long sheet of paper covered in scribbles. Hi, he said brightly. She looked up, blinking all six eyes slowly. You went into the Gauntlet. Yep. You lived. Yep. You solved it. Milo hesitated. Solved, yeah, I guess. She stared. Milo held out the paper. I made a game from the stuff inside. Want to try? Kizal took it cautiously. The rules were handwritten in blocky English and a few doodles she couldn't translate, but the logic flowed in waves, playful, rhythmic, somehow kind. I added an option where the puzzle can ask for help if it gets too hard, Milo said. My uncle says it's okay to get stuck. You just need snacks and a nap sometimes. Kizal blinked again. Then, softly, she began to cry. By the time Milo's sister, Samantha, finished her planetary politics seminar, the administrative building was in lockdown. She was intercepted by 3 security officers, 2 counselors, and a delegation liaison. Miss Edwards, said the liaison carefully, your brother has triggered a Class 4 academic ethics cascade. She sighed, already reaching for her ID. What now? They explained, briefly, then showed her the footage. Samantha facepalmed so hard she nearly bruised her forehead. Again? She said. Seriously? Last month it was that AI on Europa. The month before that, he accidentally reorganized our uncle's patent database because it had a weird rhythm. One officer blinked. He's done this before? Samantha held up 2 fingers. Do you want the funny list or the legal list? He bypassed a multi-dimensional gauntlet using a snack wrapper. Samantha turned, visibly annoyed. I told him to stop doing that. He keeps thinking vending machines are logic challenges. The human delegation was summoned. Ambassadors, educators, and Earth-based liaisons joined the conference virtually, many visibly confused. Wait, one delegate asked. Are you telling us the puzzle gauntlet was real? It was an unbreakable cognitive fortress, Administrator Zalvok snapped, and your child broke it. Technically, another alien muttered, he colored on it, and then it gave up. Ambassador Klein frowned. So you're mad because a kid treated it like a toy? Zalvok sputtered. We would like to request signage updates, Ambassador Klein continued. Something that clearly states do not enter in human-readable fonts. Milo can't parse 10-dimensional warning glyphs yet. Also, can someone clean up the melted snack residue? Later that evening, Milo sat on the grass outside the recovery lounge, doodling in his notebook. Several alien students watched from a cautious distance. A few slowly crept closer. He didn't seem dangerous. Milo looked up. "Wanna play?" he asked. The group hesitated. Then one brave, three-eyed Plithian nodded. Milo smiled and handed over a crayon. From the shadows, Professor Lithel watched with something bordering reverence. "Do you see?" he whispered. "The boy is teaching them. He's reframing trauma as play." Behind him, Administrator Zalvok groaned. "I swear," he muttered, "if Earth sends one more gifted child without a user manual." The Grand Chamber of Multispecies Academic Oversight, rarely used, and even more rarely full, was now vibrating with tension. Delegates from all 12 core systems had convened under its translucent dome, voices bouncing off the crystal amphitheater in fractal echoes. The topic was singular, immediate, bizarre. Earth. Specifically, a freckled, slightly sticky 10-year-old Earthling who had, somehow, not only survived, but completed the impossible puzzle gauntlet before his recess break ended. His biometric logs suggest mild sugar fluctuations, reported analyst Drex, projecting the vitals from Milo's medbay scan into the center of the room. No elevated brain temperature, no signs of neural overheating. He hummed through stage 14. He sang, corrected Lithel, still wearing a ceremonial neck wrap from his earlier failed attempt to psychoanalyze the footage. A rhythmic chant, possibly sacred. The tone shifts align with the puzzle's feedback loops. That child resonated with the structure. Delegate Husa, a six-limbed philosopher-educator from Varkon's crystalline moon, looked up from her notes. "So, what are we saying here? That Earth children are puzzle empathic?" "There's a precedent," muttered one of the Helion cluster's representatives. "Didn't that other human kid negotiate with a terraforming AI because he thought it was lonely?" A long silence followed. Then someone coughed. "What do we do about Milo?" asked Counselor Thurn flatly. This was supposed to be a closed-loop cognitive challenge. Students wept. "We've had to install emotional decompression chambers, and now he's running impromptu puzzle clubs under the Arboretum?" A dozen tentacles, hands, wings, and pseudopods shifted in discomfort. "And the ethics angle?" asked Counselor Yira, her voice dry. "He was not authorized to enter." "He wasn't even scheduled for any puzzle rotations this semester," muttered Zalvok. The boy was waiting for his sister. A silence fell. Everyone turned, slowly, to face the human delegation's representative, who was busy stirring her tea with a biodegradable straw. Ambassador Klein didn't flinch. She simply set her cup down, sighed, and said, "Look, Milo didn't know it was off limits. You built a glowing music-playing chamber filled with floating puzzles and no doors. What did you think would happen when a 10-year-old saw that?" He bypassed 3 security checks. He had a snack. "You keep saying that like it's an explanation." "It kind of is," Klein said. "We've run the footage. He never acted like he was trespassing. He didn't sneak, he sauntered. You could have stopped him." One of the guards on duty raised a feeble hand. He waved at me, with 2 hands. Professor Lithel leaned forward. "So, what are you suggesting, Ambassador? That we let him off? No consequences? No debriefing?" Klein took a breath, then smiled politely. "He's 10. If you want consequences, I'll revoke his dessert privileges for a week. But if you're looking to press charges against a child for solving a test too efficiently, I think your ethics board needs a nap." The debrief room was quiet, for the first time that week. Milo sat in the chair usually reserved for disciplinary reviews, his legs swinging freely above the floor. His sticker-covered backpack had been placed on the table, still faintly sticky from whatever mystery snack he'd unearthed during his puzzle run. Opposite him sat Dr. Tazev, a renowned behavioral cognitive specialist from Glothari Prime. She was a telepathic analyst, revered for her ability to draw truth from even the most jumbled minds. She could not read Milo. "Oh, wow," Milo said, pointing at her head. "Are those your real antennas, or, like, part of your hat?" Tazev blinked once, slowly. "They are part of me." "Cool. Can they pick up music stations?" The silence that followed was the kind one could butter and serve warm. "Do you understand why you're here, Milo?" she asked at last. "Sorta." He fished in his pocket, pulled out a folded note. "I think someone's mad because I used a wrapper to fix a logic loop." "That's part of it." Milo tilted his head. I didn't break anything. I checked. The lights flickered at the end, but that happens when our toaster's on too long. Did you know the puzzle gauntlet was considered unsolvable? He thought about it. I thought it was like a game. You were never told it was an advanced academic test? Nope. You didn't recognize the structure as a multidimensional challenge designed to humiliate top scholars? Milo shrugged. I mean, the patterns were fun, and some of the loops looked sad, so I helped. Tazev blinked again. Sad? Yeah, like stuck. Like when a song gets caught in your head but only the middle part. And your solution? I gave the loops an ending. Tazev stared at the child, unsure if he was joking, lying, or something worse. Something unimaginable. Genuine. That evening, a temporary directive was issued. All minor humans were to be accompanied by a faculty liaison at all times. A sign was installed outside the puzzle gauntlet with bold lettering in Earth, standard English. Not a toy. No entry without permission. Yes, even if you have snacks. Milo's sister read the sign as they passed it on their way to the shuttle terminal. She groaned. You had to draw on the walls, didn't you? They were blank, Milo replied defensively. What am I supposed to do? Not improve the emotional structure of a recursive paradox? Samantha gave him a long look. You're banned from vending machines for a month. What? That's not even related. You rewired one last week with taffy to dispense applesauce. I had to do 6 apology forms. Milo kicked a pebble, grumbling. A few alien students waved to him as they passed. Some held papers, copies of the new puzzle games he'd started sketching during medbay downtime. There were crayon diagrams, fold-out pages, and one interactive story where the puzzles asked how your day was going before letting you through. He waved back, quietly proud. In an office deep within the academy, Professor Lithel stared at a data slate in silence. A new proposal had just been submitted. Curriculum Edition, Emotionally Accessible Logic Frameworks for Early Development, proposed by Milo Edwards, age 10. Lithel exhaled, closed the slate, and muttered to himself. This changes everything. The gauntlet chamber was sealed for 6 days. Officially, it was for maintenance. Unofficially, it was because a group of educators, engineers, philosophers, and at least one panic-prone cultural linguist had barricaded themselves inside, trying to understand how a freckled 10-year-old with mild hypoglycemia had succeeded where calibrated intellects had failed. The security footage was analyzed frame by frame. In one, Milo sneezed and accidentally realigned a light grid, which shortened the time loop sequence by 4 seconds. In another, he muttered, "Oh, this is just like that dream I had about frogs and fractions," before intuitively sidestepping a recursive entanglement that had hospitalized 2 postdoctoral candidates last semester. And then there was the crayon moment. No matter how many times the committee replayed it, the son with sunglasses drawn with childlike abandon still triggered the final logic collapse. "I don't understand," whispered Professor Ozen, voice hoarse from days of round-table debate. It wasn't even symmetrical. He colored outside the lines. "That's what solved it," muttered Lithel, barely audible, hunched over a half-finished plate of nutritional cubes. The gauntlet was designed to respond to pure logic. Milo used sentiment, aesthetic defiance. He wasn't solving the puzzle, he was talking to it. "That's absurd," said Zalvok, though he no longer sounded convinced. Lithel looked up. The puzzle adapted to him, and he adapted right back. We built it to crush confidence. He treated it like it was lonely. Outside, students whispered the new phrase with wide eyes and hushed reverence. The boy who talked to the puzzle. Meanwhile, Milo had been given what the Academy called a reflective pause day, which, in practical terms, meant they asked him to stay in his room and please not touch anything even remotely glowing, humming, or geometrically unstable. Milo lasted 11 minutes before boredom took over. He laid flat on the floor, arms spread, staring at the ceiling. "Why do adults make everything so serious?" he asked aloud. His sister, lounging on the bunk above him with a datapad over her face, didn't respond. "Like, I didn't break anything. I helped. I fixed it." "You solved an ego trap built by 97 civilizations," Samantha said, without lowering the pad. "Then you rewired a cognitive hazard using a juice straw. They're not mad, they're terrified." "Of me?" "No, of what it means." Milo turned over. I just wanted to play with something cool. You did, and now half the galaxy thinks you're some kind of hyper-evolved learning weapon. Milo furrowed his brow. I'm not. I'm just me. Exactly. That same afternoon, the head of multi-species curriculum, Director Kale Umor, delivered an official statement. The Gauntlet would not be retired. It would, however, be repurposed. No longer a monument to academic hubris, it would now serve as a dynamic teaching interface, reprogrammed to respond not just to raw intellect, but to emotional interpretation, creative solutions, and though this caused some physical discomfort in certain board members' play. At the press briefing, Kale Umor stood solemnly before a full hall of students, faculty, and media feeds. We created the impossible puzzle gauntlet to humble brilliance, she said. But humility without compassion is cruelty in academic form. We thought breaking students made them better. Instead, we created a machine that forgot what learning is. She paused, then held up a small, carefully preserved square of recycled foil. This was used as a computational bridge between incompatible logic nodes. He also wiped his hands on it. Earth calls it a snack wrapper. Laughter rippled through the crowd. We've reevaluated our entire pedagogical framework, she continued, and we are proud to announce a new initiative, the Interdisciplinary Emotional Logic Project. It will be built on the foundation laid not by a council, nor by a think tank, but by a child. A child who brought crayons into a fortress of fear. Back in the common lounge, Milo stared at the screen, mid-bite of a reheated cheese pocket. They're naming a project after me? More like naming it after the idea of you, Samantha replied, not looking up from her pad, which is much more marketable. I didn't do it to be famous. I know. Milo frowned. I don't want to be famous. Then stop breaking reality with crayons. He squinted. Is it really broken if it works better now? Samantha lowered her pad. No, Milo, that's exactly what scares them. Weeks passed. The gauntlet was reopened. The new version shimmered with softer light, still complex, still challenging, but kinder. It didn't weep students anymore. It welcomed them. One of the new input methods? Drawing. Paper and styluses were provided. Music was optional. The puzzles still evolved, but now they asked questions with more than one right answer. Milo had been invited to the unveiling ceremony. He declined, said he was busy. In reality, he was under a tree, halfway through a peanut butter sandwich, helping two younger students design a game that involved logic gates and plush dinosaurs. A gentle cough interrupted him. Milo looked up to find Professor Lithell standing awkwardly nearby, holding a data pad. I brought the first draft of your curriculum proposal. Oh, cool. You changed the title? Yes. We removed the word wiggle from the subtitle. It tested poorly with the Virelians. Milo nodded. That's fair. Lithell hesitated. Do you want to come inside? Say something to the crowd? They'd listen. Milo thought about it, then shook his head. Nah, if they're gonna learn anything from what I did, it shouldn't come from me telling them. Lithell didn't reply. He simply bowed slightly and left. Milo resumed his game. That night, a quiet file appeared on the Academy's public teaching hub. No ceremony, no announcement. Alternative Learning, Applied Crayon Theory, and Emotional Logic Curriculum Framework Beta. Contributor, Milo Edwards, age 10. In the notes section, someone had uploaded a scanned doodle of the sun with sunglasses. Underneath, in messy handwriting, sometimes puzzles are just lonely problems waiting for a friend. And far above, in the orbital observation station, the gauntlet pulsed once, not in warning, but in contentment.